Hi, my name is Angela Love, and I want to share my experience, my single story experience. It actually is very similar to the example that we heard in the TED Talk. And just a few minutes into the TED Talk, a recent experience jumped into my mind that I would like to share with you. As we all know, 2020 was definitely a difficult year for many of us. We experienced so many examples of racial injustice, and things were magnified and really exploded in 2020. And I recall that when the George Floyd incident occurred, like many of you, we just experienced outrage as we watched this unfold. And, because that was on top of event after event after event after event that we had seen just recently leading up to the George Floyd murder. And so I had some friends reach out to me from high school, and my single story really revolves around one particular friend who I consider a very close friend. She was in my wedding. I was in hers. We grew up together. My kids call her auntie and vice versa. So she reached out to you and said, this George Floyd situation is just horrible, and I'm just so glad that you're not affected by it. And I thought, what do you mean I'm not affected by it? And what she said was, you're not like those Black people. And so really the single story in her mind of me was developed based on where I grew up. I grew up in a city in Northern California that is not diverse at all. I was 99% of the time the only Black student in my class, on my team, in my club, in the room. And that's just the nature of how I grew up. And so that's really how this single story developed, is because I grew up in this affluent neighborhood. I have two parents that are still married. I have two parents with jobs. I have two parents with really good jobs. We had a nice income. We lived a comfortable lifestyle. We lived around the corner from the Joneses. And so that single story narrative was that based on my zip code where I grew up, I couldn't possibly feel any type of way by the George Floyd incident, or any of the other Breonna Taylor, any of the other incidents, because they don't affect me, because I'm not truly a Black person because of where I grew up and because of the demographics of my parents, where they worked, how they worked, their income, where I went to school, my college education. I've even heard things that I either talk white or don't sound Black. And so the TED Talk that we listened to really resonated with me, because what I heard the speaker say is that when we pin people into the single story, we don't allow room for possibilities. And so there was no possibility that I could be outraged as a Black person, that I could be afraid for my sons, that I could be afraid for my husband, that I could be, mad, frustrated, confused, all of those things, because the single story is that if you grow up in a nice neighborhood, or vice versa, if you're only Black, if you you have parents who are incarcerated or on drugs, or you have multiple baby daddies, what have you. And so my job as a leader is to make sure that the students we serve, that we expose multiple stories, and that we just don't assume the single story in our student demographic based on what neighborhood they grew up in or didn't grow up in, or what they look like or what they sound like, because then we don't allow people the full experience of living when we assume how they will react or feel about certain situations based on the zip code that they live in. So that's my single story experience, and I welcome all your comments. Thank you.